President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. Before the floor is given to the International Deputy Co-Prosecutor to resume the questioning, I ordered the court officers to get back the collection of photographs from the witness. And I want to remind and tell the witness that if you want to use any document or collection of photos to be the basis for your testimony, you can ask the chamber to provide them to you. Now the floor is given to the International Deputy Co-Prosecutor to resume questioning. You may proceed now.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, we were talking about photographs you took on trips to the zones during the regime. Can you tell us, you mentioned Pol Pot and Son Sen. In addition to them, which other leaders did you go with when you went on these trips to the zones?
Mr. Co-Prosecutor, I went with Pol Pot, Thamok, number 3 Ieng Sari, and number 4 Son Sen, and as well as Nuon Chia. During the time of the trip when I went to took photos of visitors at various dams, Camping Pui Reservoir, Topiang Mo Dam Worksite, 1st January Dam Worksite. There were many other locations where I went to take the photo rather.
Do you remember which locations you went to with Nuon Chea?
I went with him 2 times to the west and also to the northwest. And at the time we went to examine the activities of building the dam at those locations.
What do you remember the specific dam work sites you visited with Nuon Chea in the northwest?
During the trip, we went to Camping Pui Reservoir in Battambang Province. There was another dam in Sector 31, close to the location named Phnom Kuk in Kampong Chnang.
Mr. Kope asked you yesterday if you had photographs of Ros Nim. Do you have photographs of Nuon Chea that you took on these trips to the zones?
I do not bring them along. They are in Siem Reap province currently.
Do you have any approximation of how many photographs of Nuon Chea you might have in your collection?
I cannot give a full description. I went with him in the meetings of zone committees and also in district committees. They are more, not less than 300 photographs, but some of them were lost.
Were there any occasions on which Khieu Samphan was in the group of leaders that you traveled with to the provinces?
In relation to Kyu Sompon, I rarely saw him out there. During the big or small meetings, I rarely, I rarely saw him. Although he was at the state presidium, I rarely saw him. And some of the information was not known to him. As usual, Sun Sen, Nuon Chea, and Pol Pot and Ieng Sari were made known of much information. And I am now telling this court, the international court, that I rarely saw him. He rarely went out in the field, and perhaps trust was not placed on him, perhaps.
Let me refresh your recollection, Mr. Witness. In your first OCIJ interview, E368, English 00401-820 through 821, Khmer 00162-839, French 00195-659 through 660. You gave the following testimony. Question: did you ever meet Kyu Samphan in the provinces and take photos of him? Yes, I did. I took photos of the leaders all over Cambodia, very many. I understand that you are saying he was less frequent, but do you remember any occasions, any locations that you visited where Kyu Samphan was present?
Mr. Co-Prosecutor, I recall that there was one time I saw him on a train to Kampong Sam. That was the only time. I rarely saw him in various meetings in other locations. And for the international sphere, I had no idea whether he was involved in the international affairs. I did not see him. I rarely saw him, and there was only one time when I saw him in the meetings of the assembly and also in the meetings of the troops, said the witness.
Where did you see him? When was it that you saw him at meetings of the troops?
One happened at Boracay, and the second one was at Sector 25, Angkor Thom. And at the time, the meeting was held among the people and also the cooperatives. And these were the two times I saw him, and the other time was when he was on the train. And for the international affairs, I have no idea, and perhaps he was involved in the international affairs, but I rarely saw him in the local affairs.
In the same interview excerpt I just read, you referred to a trip on which Kyu Samphan and Ieng Sary were with you, where they went to a special meeting in Koh Tom. Is that the Sector 25 meeting that you just mentioned? And if so, can you tell us what was that meeting about that you went to with Kyu Samphan?
In that meeting, nothing was discussed, but the subject of cooperative and progress in the country was made a mention, and invasion by neighboring countries was mentioned. The plan of modern agriculture for the period of 10 to 15 years was also mentioned. That was the subject of the discussion, and that was also the regulation was made known to the people, but the subject on treaties was not mentioned.
And who was it that spoke on these subjects at this meeting?
Kyo Sampon addressed the meeting, but there were other leaders behind him, Chun Pisat, Chun Mom, Ing Sari. There were many of them, but I cannot recall them all. I have a photo while Kyo Sampon was addressing the crowd. Actually, I have collection of photo and other documents with me, but I cannot bring them all here. But I can share with you all those documented photos.
That was going to be my next question. Do I understand correctly then that at home or in Siem Reap you also have a collection of photographs of Kyu Sampon?
Answer. Yes, I have Kyu Sampon photos from the period of 1979 up to 1995. However, the photos of him in the period of Democratic Cambodia were not of many.
You've mentioned that one of the sites you visited was the Trapiang Tama Dam in the northwest. How many times did you go to the Trapiang Tama Dam?
The first time was the time when in the inauguration day, and the third time was the time when I went to film. Hang Sun-ho from China came to join the group of filming. He taught me how to film by using the 18, 16, or 35 mm cameras, and it was difficult to use those kind of cameras at the time.
Who were the Khmer Rouge leaders who were present on your on the occasions that you went to the Trapiang Tama Dam?
Regarding the leadership, there were Ruo Nhum, the Northwest Committee, and for the district committee, I knew Ye Chai. At the time, I was young, although she perhaps did not recognize me, but I could recognize her. Nat was with me on the trip, Sun Sen and other advisor experts. And Sun Hao, the ambassador in Cambodia at the time, was also present at the time.
I'm not sure if this was a translation issue in English. It indicated that Hu Nim was one of the leaders. Did you mean Hu Nim, or were you referring to Rus Nim, the leader of the Northwest Zone?
Answer. Ruo Nhum was the committee of Northwest in charge of Sector 1, 2, and 5. He was in charge of the Northwest. I saw him once or twice, and I was not close to him.
You mentioned just now that M. Chem was one of the leaders who was present when you visited Trapiang Tama. I want to get your reaction to a statement she made about Trapiang Tama in a DC Cam interview. This is, Your Honors, E3/5657, E3/5657 at Khmer 0006133, English 000897778, French 0034731. And this is what M. Cham said. Question: during the regime, while you worked at the Trapping Tama, have you ever welcomed any delegation or those at the central level who came to visit here? Answer, they came, letting me accompany. Question, who were those from the upper level? Answer, Chinese and Uncle Q-Sampan also came and visited there. Question, did Noon Chea Pol Pot come? Answer, Pol Pot visited occasionally, but Q-Sampan did often. Question, did Q-Sampan himself visit the dam? Answer, yes, he did. Question, what was his comment? Answer, while seeing human forces working at the dam and at the rice field, he urged us to continue to work hard. End of quote. Does this refresh your memory, Mr. Witness, about the leaders who visited the Trapping Tama Dam? Do you have any memory of whether Q-Sampan was present on either of your trips to Trapping Tama?
Regarding the issue, I told the court already there were 6 photographers. Sometimes I was engaged in the activities at Tuas Lai, Song and Nut over on trips on some occasion. I was with Son Sen and Tan Nat at Ang Trapang Tmo or Trapang Tmo Dam. I was there 3 times. There was one time that I went there to film the movie, and I never went with Kil Sampon and Nuon Chia.
Let me ask you, you also mentioned the 1st January dam. Were you referring to the dam that's on the Chanit River in Kampong Thom province? Is that the dam that you visited?
There was a dam named the 6th January Dam. And there was another dam, 30 September Dam at Stone in Kampong Thom. In Kampong Thom, to my recollection, to my knowledge, there were 2 dams. Actually, there were many dams during the time. And the plan of Angka to curb the water in Stung Jinat, I guess the dam was 6 January, but perhaps the number was altered or changed.
I'll refer to the this is the dam that was on the Chanit River. How many times did you go there, and do you remember which Khmer Rouge leaders were with you on the trips to the dam at the Chanit River?
Back then, I went with Pol Pot together with the Chinese. And there were the Chinese experts or technicians who were specialized in the irrigation construction and also the electricity construction. And at the time, Pol Pot was was there for a brief period of time, and he went back.
Mr. President, with your leave, I'd like to show to the witness photographs E3/3282 and E3/3283. That's 3282 and 3283. To see if the witness can help identify these photographs, with your leave.
President, you can do so.
if you could look at these two photographs, Mr. Witness, and first of all, tell us if you recognize the location, and second, whether these are photographs you took or whether they were taken by someone else.
That this photo was taken by me. It was at 6 January Dam worksite, and I also took a photo of photos at the 30th September Dam. Everyone was in black clothes at the time, and perhaps there may be some time I have a confusion on some photos that I did not take. But let me confirm that there are thousands of photos about the dam.
For the record, the photograph the witness was holding up, which he indicated he took, was E3/3282. Do you remember accompanying a female delegation from Laos and Ing Turit on a trip where they visited a number of sites, including the January Dam, first January Dam?
Let me tell you, Mr. Co-Prosecutor, I would like to backtrack a little bit. As I told you, there were 6 photographers. Sometimes I was not at the dam site or sites. And in some books in the world and in some documents, they do not mention correctly. Names are not incorrect in all those books and articles. The digging of the dike and also the building of the dam was true, was what happening at the time. Laotian delegation, Burmese delegation, Thai delegation were there at the sites, and sometimes I was not at the sites with those delegations, but my team members were there.
Fair enough, Mr. Witness. You've also mentioned that you accompanied Chinese delegations. Document E3/1339, E3/1339 is the records contains various Democratic Kampuchea radio broadcasts in December 1977 when a delegation from China led by Chen Yung-kui traveled to a number of sites, including the first January Dam and the Trapeang Tama. Do you remember whether you were present during parts of that trip when Chen Yung-kui toured Democratic Kampuchea?
Mr. Co-Prosecutor, that is true. I went with His Excellency Chen Yung-kui. He was a minister of agriculture in China. He was specialized in growing rice plants, and the produce was up to tons of rice. I went with Ieng Sary Pol Pot and other troop leaders, and Chinese delegation was also on the trip. I have a photo of the time, and during the time there were 10 palm trees in that location when I took the photo, but now 2 palm trees remained. I have that photo with me at home. They in fact visited some locations for a brief period of time, but they spent much time in Angkor Wat. And Chen Yung-kui and other delegation wanted to visit the agricultural sites at the time, how the agriculture was made in the country.
Thank you for that. Did you go on trips? Did you ever go on any trips to the East Zone with either Pol Pot or Noon Chea? And if so, where did you go?
I never went with them to the east, but I went with Pol Pot to Chap mountain or Yechap mountain in the northwest. I never went with them to the east.
And you mentioned in your interviews that you also took photographs of Khmer Rouge leaders at leadership meetings, assemblies, military meetings, where they were giving speeches. Can you tell us what was the location of the meetings or assemblies where you took photographs of Khmer Rouge leaders?
The photos of leaders, namely Nguyen Chia, in charge of assembly, and Pol Pot, the first brother, and also at the museum close, adjacent to the river, and also the photos at the Sadam Ko were the venues of the meeting and also the discussion of the attack by Vietnam in 79 or 78, 77 and 78. And the day that the party announced the establishment of the party, I guess there are many photos of them. In fact, I had a lot of tasks to perform, although at the time I was 7 or 18 years old. President. Mr. Witness, please, you are reminded again to speak slower, and please limit your response to the question put to you. Some of your answers are not correct, are not consistent, or are not responding to the question put by the party.
Do you remember, Mr. Witness, whether one of the meetings or ceremonies that you took photographs at was the annual or the anniversary ceremony for the Revolutionary Army of Kampuchea, which was held each year in January? Did you take photographs at that event?
Answer: yes. I took a lot of photos, particularly in the special meetings of Assembly and Senate, said the witness. And the meetings did not occur very frequently at the time, although there were some minutes in the document, and the meetings subject was about mostly the situation at the border.
There is a record and evidence, a record of a Democratic Kampuchea government radio broadcast of a speech given by Noon Chea celebrating the 9th anniversary of the Revolutionary Army of Kampuchea on 16 January 1977. This is document E3/147. Khmer ERN 00679-792 through 802, English 00168-465 through 470, French 00698-444 through 450. My question to you, do you remember Noon Chea speaking at the annual ceremony for the Revolutionary Army of Kampuchea? And do you remember whether you took any pictures of that event?
The meeting was held at Borai Gila, and there were soldiers who attended the meeting. There were soldiers from more than 10 divisions were gathered at the Olympic Stadium to listen to the speeches of Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, and Son Sen, and actually had to sing a song together.
Before I move on to some questions, my next subject, which is your work at S21, when you were present at these meetings of the Khmer Rouge leaders where you took photographs, did you ever hear any discussion about purges of enemies? And if so, what did you hear the leaders say about purges?
Thank you for this important question. For me and for those who died during the regime, the ANCA had planned to, number one, to eliminate the CIA agents of America. Second, to eliminate the Russian KGB agents. Third, the June agents who intended to swallow the territory. And next in line would be the infiltrated enemy. During the regime, there were no judiciary and no legal representation, but ANCA had to eliminate those kinds of enemies after the victory day of 17 April 1975, and Pol Pot expressly made that clear to everyone.
Did you hear Pol Pot talk about this subject? And if so, do you remember what the occasion was when you heard Pol Pot address the subject of purges?
He spoke about this in 1977 and also in 78, and he also spoke about this at the Olympic Stadium rally, and also his voice was broadcast rather consistently on radio.
And when these purges took place of various zones, who was sent to replace the cadres who were purged, if you know?
I understand your question well. After the purges had been conducted throughout the country, they were replaced by mostly those cadres from the southwest, and that happened throughout the country. The replacement cadres usually came from the southwest to take those posts. And also members from Division 703 were replaced by those from the southwest under the command of Tam Mok, Pol Pot, Ieng Sary, and Nuon Chea. And except Khieu Samphan, those 3 or 4 people actually worked well together, in particular Son Sen, who was in charge of security and military.
I want to ask you about a statement you made in an interview you gave back in 1997. This is document E3/7495, E3/7495, Khmer ERN 00826-562, English 00078-259, French 00795-353. This is what you said about the purges in that interview. Quote, "After 2 years or so, I noticed everything the Khmer Rouge did was done through violence, cruelty, and dictatorship. I felt different because I saw what they did was dictatorial, cruel, summary justice. They were not doing investigations before killing people. A big or small mistake was enough to be arrested. Even if they had not betrayed the country, they were still accused and arrested." End of quote. You said here that things were done by summary justice. Can you explain what did you mean by summary justice?
It would need me more than an hour to comment on this question. However, regarding the subject of purges, and let me backtrack a little bit. There were only 3 or 4 who were in command, namely Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, and Son Sen. And the purges were so injustice for the victims, namely those who died at Tuol Sleng. Maybe thousands of people had been killed at Tuol Sleng, and maybe only about 100 of them who actually committed an offense. And that is unfair and unjust for the Cambodian people living under the regime. One of my other siblings was also killed amongst my 25 relatives who lost their lives. And my other brother was shot dead in Koh Kong. He was part of the naval force at the time. I actually have a photograph of him. So there were countless examples of how those people died unfairly under the regime.
I want to turn now to your time at working as a photographer at S21. The first thing I want to ask you is, where was it where you and the other photographers took the pictures, took the photographs of the arriving prisoners? Was it inside the S21 compound? Was it outside the compound before they entered? Can you describe for us as specific as you can where it was that you took the photographs?
There were 2 parts of the photography process. Prisoners usually brought in by a vehicle with a cross symbol on it, that is to notify that it was from the hospital. And there were 2 main compounds within the Tuol Sleng premise. Prisoners will be photographed after they were unfolded. And in case that there were more prisoners, then they will be placed in those buildings A, B, C, and their photographs will be taken inside those buildings. So there were 2 stages where photography was made. That is, one at the compounds outside, and second when they were inside those buildings.
I want to show you a few photographs and see if you can recognize or identify the location for us. First, Mr. President, I'd like to provide him with what is pages P01223 690 through 692. This is in E394.1. It's part of the collection of 1,000 photographs that was added by DC Cam. recently. With your leave, may I provide this to the witness?
Yes, you may do that.
And I'm going to refer to some photographs. The photographs in this collection that was provided to the court by DC Cam have their own numbers on them that are different than the numbers that were used in the photographs you took. I'm going to first direct you to the numbers that DC Cam has put on this document. And I'd like you to look at photographs 3, 10, 13, 14, 18, and 24 on these 2 pages. What these photographs all have in common is that there's the background. There appears to be some sort of shuttered wall, wood shutters. My question is, do you recognize the location where those photographs are taken, and can you tell us where that was in relation to the S21 compound?
In relation to this photo, usually the photo would be taken of those against a plain background or plain wall, and the photograph of a man with the door or framed that was taken inside the building. Usually we would have a panel behind the prisoners when their photographs were taken. As for the number for each prisoner, and in fact the number notified the date the photography was taken.
I'm going to ask you about the system you used for the numbers of the prisoners in a little bit. On the back of these photographs and what was provided to us by DC Cam, for at least for photographs that were taken in 1976 and 1977, there is handwriting that appears on the back of the photographs. Can you tell me, do you recognize that whose handwriting that is? And can you tell us whether this handwriting, which contains the name of prisoners and the dates of the photographs, was added by your unit, or was this information that was added later after you had provided the copies of the photographs?
The handwriting belonged to Sriang, who had a neat handwriting, and I myself has a very awkward handwriting.
And just can you explain who Sreem was?
He had his native name in my book, but Sriang is his revolutionary name. He was one of the squad leader of the photographers.
Thank you. After the photos were developed and this information was written on the back, what was done with them next? Who were the photographs provided to after that?
President, witness, please observe the microphone. Witness. On this matter, sometimes they wrote it on a piece of in the book, and it was rarely that the writing was done directly on the photograph. And after that, the photographs would be sent to Suti, who was in charge of maintaining the list of incoming and outgoing prisoners. Some important photos, namely of those leaders, would be given to Deutsch.
And who was it that would deliver the photos to either Susti or to Deutsch?
Sometimes I did that. Sometimes Sriang did it. And as I said, there were 6 photographers, and we had to be responsible for the photographs that we took.
Can you tell us a little bit about the arrival of the prisoners? How were you informed when prisoners were arriving that you were to photograph? And can you tell us when the prisoners arrived, were they tied up? Were they blindfolded? How were the prisoners when they were brought to you to be photographed?
For incoming prisoners, and during that time we had telephoned in every office within the Tu Slang compound. When the phone rang, I would go to see those prisoners, and 100% of them would be handcuffed and blindfolded except women. When they arrived, the blindfolds will be taken off, handcuffed, then they would be photographed and then sent to those buildings.
And who was it that took off the handcuffs and the blinds? Did you do that, the photographers do that, or did the guards do that?
I did not remove the blindfolds. It was the duty of the guards. As for the cuff, allow me to clarify, the cuffs were not removed, only the blindfolds were removed. And after we took the photograph, then the prisoners will be taken into the buildings. We could not even talk to the prisoners, and we had to only focus on our task, that is to take photographs of those prisoners.
Were there occasions where the prisoners said anything to you or asked you questions? And if so, what types of things, if anything, would the prisoners say when their blindfolds were removed and you were there to take their photograph? Do you remember whether prisoners would say anything to you?
I met a district committee from Kampong Leng, and I had a look at his biography. His name was Ta Jim. He was accused of having an affair with a GA man who was in charge of female soldiers. Kampong Leng at that time was known as District 16. Then I asked him where he came, and he said that he came from Kampong Leng. I was a bit surprised because my other brother was also part of the Kampong Leng District Committee. And I asked him whether he knew Mon, and he said yes, he knew Comrade Mon, the district committee. So when the chief of the committee was arrested, the deputy would also be arrested. And he was the only prisoner that I spoke to after I secretly read his biography.
And I just want to clarify, in the book that you were kind enough to provide to us, there's a photograph on page 44 of your book. Can you tell me, is this one of the people you're talking about, who appears on the photograph on page 44? Can you tell us who, do you have a copy of your book? So my question is, in the photograph on page 44, who is one of these people the chief of Kampong Leng district that you're talking about, or is this a photograph of the woman who had fallen in love with the chief? Can you clarify that for us?
This is the photo of a Ye Man, who was a female military commander in Sector 31. She was faithful in the battle against the Lonol soldiers. She got injured and one of her breasts was removed. She was arrested on the allegation that she had an affair. She was a female military commander in Sector 31.
And the person she had the affair with, was that the district chief from Kampong Leng, who you just mentioned a few minutes earlier, who you talked to when he arrived at S21?
He was the chief of Kampong Leng district, and it was known as District 16 in Sector 31 of Kampong Chnang province. The person was not a secretary, but was the chief of the district.
Now, we see in the S21 prisoner photographs different numbers that appear in the pictures of the prisoners. Can you explain to the court the system or procedure that was used when photographs were taken for putting numbers on the prisoners?
President witness, please wait. And Councillor Kope, you have the floor.
Yes, Mr. President. I know that a request was made by the prosecution to have these photos admitted, but I might be wrong, but I'm not aware yet of any decision from the bench on admitting these photographs. Although I understand the relevance of those photographs, I believe a decision, if there is not any yet, should be made first.
I'm happy for the court to do that. The list of these photographs was admitted as E3. One moment. The list of the photographs, which was included in our original trial document list, has already been admitted by the trial chamber as E3 9214. As you know from our filing, the photographs were not available when we did our original trial document list. So we have asked that these be added into document E3 9214. But I certainly agree with counsel. It would be good to have a ruling on that, and certainly this is a witness who we should be using these photographs with.
Any objection by any of the other parties to the admittance of these photos? I'm looking around. No. I don't see any objections.
Thank you. My question for you right now isn't, it doesn't require you to look at the photographs, but before we break, can you explain to the court the procedure or how it was that the numbering of the that appears in the photographs of the S-21 prisoners?
Since I am a photographer, that is my responsibility. When prisoners arrived by tracks, they were ordered to get off the tracks. We as photographers didn't interact with them, and we were only ready to take their photographs. As for the number, usually, for example, if they arrived on Monday, they would be numbered according to the hour. For example, from 6, 7 to 10 to 12, for example, or from 1 to 500. That number is done, was done per day. And sometimes the number could run into 600 or 700. And the number that they wore denoted the number of prisoners arrived on a particular day.
So do I understand correctly that each day you would start over with the first prisoner being number 1, using number 1, and you would continue sequentially for all the prisoners you photographed that day? Do I understand correctly?
Yes, that is true. The number started each day from number 1, and it could run into hundreds for this particular period of 24 hours. And after that, it will return to number 1 again. For that reason, you could see repeated numbers on various prisoners since they arrived on different days. President, thank you. It is now appropriate for our lunch break. We take a break now and resumed at 1:30 this afternoon. Court officer, please assist the witness at the waiting room reserved for witnesses and civil parties and invite him back into the courtroom at 1:30 this afternoon. Security personnel, you are instructed to take Kyo Sampon to the waiting room downstairs and have him returned to attend the proceedings in this courtroom before 1:30. The court is now in recess.